She's always there to fill in, give advice. The spidey sense kicks in and is able to just, like I said, complement. I think the word I keep coming back to is complementary. Like we complement each other so well. I push her and pull her at times, and then she is also doing the exact same, but in a different facet of our lives. She's pushing and pulling personally, I'm pushing and prodding kind of professionally.
Hello, everybody. We're back for another episode of I Am Driven, and I am so excited to be here today with Patrick and Patrick's wife, Karissa. I'd love for you guys to introduce yourself. I know that Patrick is a fellow EOS implementer, but Patrick, tell us more about you.
Yeah, so Patrick Metzger, located in the Fargo-Moorhead area, right on the border between North Dakota, Minnesota. Entrepreneur. Once upon a time in my former life, I always say, was a teacher of 11 years. Have been in coaching my entire life. So coaching, teaching, facilitating is in my blood. But yeah, I've been an entrepreneur now for about maybe 7, 8-ish years at most. A certified EOS implementer and value builder advisor, and also a certified exit planning advisor as well.
A lot of certifications.
You are definitely driven. We had an opportunity to talk last week, a couple of weeks ago. How do you understand being driven? What does driven mean to you?
The biggest thing I see, Doug, in being driven is just, man, that concept of that horizon, and there's always more, and there's always a better way to do it, and there's always a better way to improve it. I can't help but look at life with just like a process improvement lens in every single way possible.
This season, we're talking all about drivens and relationships, how drivens interact in a human world, because, the world wasn't created for us drivens. We're only 10% of the world. So, Karissa, I'd love you to introduce yourself. And Doug had a question for you right before we started the podcast, and I'd love that question to be presented on the podcast.
So, Karissa Metzger, married to Patrick. We have been married for 17 years, almost 18. Yeah, we have a 7-year-old spunky daughter, and she keeps us on our toes. So that's super fun. 3 years ago, I came on to help Patrick in his business, help support him with just some administrative kind of duties. And then along with that, I left my 13-year career and started with him. And then also I work with a high-end interior designer. It's been great. Super fun, lots of variety.
What'd you do before?
I worked for a family-run business that exported food-grade soybeans. So I handled all of the bookings with the big steamship lines, all of the documentation required for customs, and just the whole process. So it was great. I loved it.
Woman to woman, I was going to tell you, you are beautiful. Like, I looked at you and I was like, this woman knows her colors. Working interior designer.
You mentioned earlier, you're 3-4 chapters into Driven. What does Driven mean to you? And Rachel and I are quickly concluding that driven women are very different than driven men.
Yeah, so it was interesting because, Patrick and I had kind of gone through some of just like, hey, these are some of the things to kind of just think about before. And one of the things that I kind of mentioned right away is like my intuition, my spidey sense, as our team always calls it. And so when I got to, I feel like it was maybe in chapter 2, when I got to that part, I was like, yes, that's me. Yep, that's me. So I guess like for me, that's kind of a big thing, is just, extremely high intuition, just that gut feeling of if something feels right or not. Another thing that I guess I kind of think of is just like do what you say you're going to do. That's big for me, is just like follow through. Kind of just like the organization of our life, and I mean, just work, all of that, just super detailed, super organized. I just always want to be someone on my word, and I follow through. So to me, that's kind of my version of how I view myself being driven. But
I'm going to jump in here. Dr. Doug asked, do you think you're driven? And we kind of skipped that question.
I do, but differently than Patrick.
I was going to say, I spoke to Patrick at the conference, and he's like, I have this big, giant red donut. My wife has something more like a starship, right? Like and I am seeing more and more that people that have like integrator personalities, it's a different type of driven. when we bring it back to the visionary integrator or husband, wife, right? A lot of very lucky, fortunate, driven men attract women that have high follow through, that are detail oriented. Do what you say. My husband wasn't that fortunate. We're both high quick starts. Our life is a nightmare. But do you appreciate the drivenness in that? When did you realize that you, with your personality of being high follow through, do what you say is also driven, but a different type of driven?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it goes back long before 5 or 6 years ago, but I feel like 5, 6 years ago, I mean, for both Patrick and I, that's when we kind of both, he really was looking to make a change, was looking for my support. And so I kind of had to, just like look within myself too, just leaving that like just stable job, stable income and going more, into the entrepreneurial path. I feel like that's maybe really when I started to realize like, hey, this is going to take like guts, I guess, and resiliency from me too, not just him making these moves, because it's us together.
I'll never forget the conversation, Karissa, you and I had when we basically decided that I was going to take this route. And I told you, I said, hey, if I'm going to go on this journey, you have to be along for the ride. And both of us are very linear, forward-thinking individuals. So I knew like, man, if I go on this big self-development entrepreneurial journey and she's not along for it, like it's going to be the end of us at some point. So I'll never forget that conversation that we had regarding that.
How did you guys negotiate the risk?
I think for me, like I could just see not how unhappy he was, but just that he had more in him. And to me, it's just like, how could I not let him explore whatever that more looked like or what he was searching for? At times it's like I get kind of, or I did in the past maybe get more frustrated with, you have this and we have this, and like, I mean, we should be happy, and you like, why can't you just be content with what we have, sort of thing. I mean, I'm definitely out of that mindset.
Patrick and Karissa, I just launched Driven Spouse Forum, and that's for spouses of entrepreneurs that are driven. And yes, both are driven, but one of the things that happens is there's this gap where the driven entrepreneur grows, and the spouse doesn't come along. And you're saying that you knew that you need to come together. What are you actually doing to make sure that you're staying on the same page? Because one of the gaps that happen is a knowledge gap. Like you're out there in EOS, you're gaining information. All that information is emotional intelligence. Your spouse is not coming along to EOS conferences. How is she gaining that knowledge and making sure you're staying on the same page?
I think we do a fantastic job of communicating first and foremost. Karissa sits in on our weekly meeting in our business, our weekly L10 meeting. I'd love to not talk as much business at home as we do, but it's inevitable. There's no way around it. But I think just the communication piece. I mean, Karissa and I we've known each other now for how long? 24 years we're going on. I mean, we dated in high school and stuff, so we've known each other so well. But from the very beginning, we've just been very, very good at communicating, and we don't keep things from each other. And it's just radically candid, open, honest in how we talk with each other about feelings and desires and goals. And I mean, we do annual goal setting.
What is your orange story? How did you guys meet? Because this conversation that seems to continue no matter what is going on in your world, did that start from the beginning? Did you guys click right away?
You can answer that one.
I think so. I mean, Patrick fell madly in love, right away.
Well, the two drivens, when they meet, there's an intensity. I mean, there's a dopaminergic kind of soulmatey kind of thing going on. Did you guys both feel that? Or, I mean, Patrick, by the look on his face.
I guess I would say so. I don't know. I just kind of always knew like we were going to be together. I don't know. Especially after we went on our first date. I don't know. Yeah, I just had that feeling. It's really hard. It's really hard to explain.
I don't think you were as driven back then, though, or at least it wasn't visible. I felt like you were more of like a complementary to myself, I guess, is kind of how I look. Like it felt like yin yang rather than like two people both going 100 miles an hour in the same direction and found each other.
Why weren't you scared away by his drivenness?
I could feel him trying to help me grow or get better, but not in a like pushy way. Just, I feel like Patrick for sure way back then already like really helped build like my own confidence up. Yeah, I wouldn't say I was always as, and I still at times am not as confident as I would like to be, but I've definitely come a long ways. And I think a lot of that is because of like Patrick's encouragement.
You could sense the value of him from the moment you met him.
For sure.
I would want to know your origin story, because what I'm seeing is patterns of women realizing their driven is emerging later in their life when they're married driven. So you only found out you were driven, where Patrick, if we would ask him, he would most probably tell us all the mischief and rebelliousness and the things that he did as a child, right? I'm curious, Karissa, what's your story? Because what I see is like there's the law of attraction. We attract driven spouses based on our history. When I was dating, my sister said, you need to find somebody that's going to keep you entertained because you're going to get bored so fast. But I didn't see that in me. I didn't see me as the driven person, yet I attracted somebody that was super like high energy. So
Sure.
what is your origin story of you?
I mean, growing up, both of my dad farmed and my mom worked outside of the home full time. And so my parents were very hard workers. I think just like seeing their work ethic was definitely instilled in me. So, you know, whether you look at good work ethic, the same as like being a driven person, I mean, I feel like they go hand in hand. But yeah, I mean, just their example, I guess, was huge for me, I think.
And it took you a while to get there. I mean, because you were in a steady job. You were at SB&B for what, 13 years, right?
13, yeah.
And it kind of took me until I got into a new place,
Yeah.
said, you know, honey,
Yes.
what do you want to do? Like, there's something, I could feel it from her and hear it from you too, saying there's something else kind of that I want to do. And it kind of took me poking and prodding and just saying, like, take the leap. Like, it might not be what you want to do, but take that stepping stone leap.
And I mean, there were definitely, I mean, that, yes, leaving, you know, my career of 13 years was a huge leap for me. And I think for me, it was like when it got to the point where there was this little voice when I was just, the office that I worked at was just a mile outside of the community that we live in. And so I would go home for lunch every day. And I just remember like kind of day after day driving back out to work after lunch and just having that like feeling of like, this is it, huh? This is what I'm going to be doing. As much as I loved it, like I really did, and I was good at it. I loved it. The company, the people I worked with, I mean, everything about it, the variety. But
Yeah,
yet
the
I had this
variety.
like voice that was like, this is it, huh?
Best definitions of driven I've ever heard. That little voice in us that says, man, there's got to be more than this. How did that come out as a kid? Or was that buried? Was that, for me, that was the forefront of, I think, second grade, I thought school was stupid. There's got to be more than this. And it has almost killed me with drugs. I mean, there's got to be a better high than this, or whatever I applied it to. How did you manage that before did it wake up, or something you buried?
I think like in school, I didn't mind school, but I was just kind of your average student. I had to study, I had to try really hard. Again, that kind of goes back to the confidence like maybe that's why, you know, my confidence wasn't super great, right? But it's like, once I found things I found things that I'm passionate about, it's like you find that I can be good at something, even though maybe all these things in these textbooks, you know, don't resonate, right?
It's very insightful for me, because Patrick can talk to this too. We have something called false pride, or pride. Men, that's our curse, is pride. If the part of me that says, oh man, it'll be okay, I'll figure it out, let's jump anyway, is so much in front of him. You guys don't do that. That's why you outshoot us every time at the range, because you follow directions much better. Trust that the direction is going to lead you to somewhere that you need to go. Where men, we just, no, let's find a shortcut.
But Dr. Doug, what I'm seeing, and tell me if I'm wrong, Chris, were you like you worked very hard, but you always wanted to get A's and hundreds, and it was very important to you to be that type of student?
Yeah, of course, because I mean, just like I would imagine most anyone growing up, you're comparing yourself to, other kids. And so, yeah, that was a big thing for me, I guess. I mean, I'm making it sound like I did horrible, but I had to work hard at it.
So that need, like I didn't have that need. I didn't want hundreds. Like for me, 85 was the celebration. I could get 100 if I want, but I didn't want to because I'm a rebel, right? So that's one type of driven. And then we talk about the other type of driven, which is that need for perfection. And
Sure.
you're constantly running after that perfection. And that's like exercising that driven muscle in your brain. So that's
Mhm.
the other type of driven. And Doug, we see this a lot in women, correct?
Yeah, and it is, well, the perfect cheerleader, the perfect mom, the perfect,
Yes.
never good enough mom, never good enough, whatever. That kind of celebration for actually success in women hampers that, it's compliance. I don't know about your experience, Patrick, but I was a punk rocker. I was actually, screw the world, I will make noise. And I always joked when I was first really 15 years ago when I was coming up with this driven stuff. We always talk about door kicker SEALs, Navy SEALs that are door kickers. They break in the door and they kick it, and then you have snipers. And snipers are sneaky SEALs. And that sneakiness it's the same path, but it's a different operation, different mode of operation. So I think that comes out. And it tends to be women are much more sneaky in their, not all of them. I mean, I've seen some pretty brash, perfectionistic women but most is there's a need to actually kind of go under the radar more.
I like as we're talking to more women, I'm seeing a bit of both, and I would want to look at your assessment. I can make an assumption maybe that the hyper focus is high on your driven assessment.
Did you resonate with hyper focus?
I
When
think
you
I'm
were in your job at 13 years, mastering how to, you could really drop in.
Oh, yeah. And I wanted to control it, right? I mean, I was a control freak about, I mean, if I was gone for a couple days and someone else had to step in or, handle a few things, I mean, I could do it, but it was hard. I sure had things organized as easily, as much as I could, so that it would be as easy for whoever was taking over. I'm a control freak when it comes to that stuff. Patrick, will ask me like, what's the difference if the bed is made every morning or not? And it's like, it's just a thing that I could control.
Her coworkers used to come into her office and make fun of her desk because everything would be at right angles and in a perfect pile. And like,
Oh,
is it
yeah.
working on this desk actually?
You look underneath and there's the drivenness. There it is.
Yes, that's exactly
Yeah.
different. And what I'm saying is like women usually don't realize that that's their drivenness. They
Sure.
get visionaries. They're like, oh, they're driven. I'm not. So my question to you is, and I might be putting you on the spot here. Do you ever feel like you get lost in Patrick's shadow? Because like Patrick is a classic driven. Like the world recognizes Patrick as a driven. Is it easy for you to get lost in the shadow and your identity to get lost and look at yourself as Patrick's wife versus like, who am I as a person?
I don't think so, because I kind of like just being the one behind the scenes. I don't want to be noticed.
Do you know how important you are to Patrick?
I think I do. Yeah.
What evidence
Patrick?
do you have for that? I'm going to fish on this one. I'll make Patrick cry. What evidence do you have? How do you know you're so important? Can you imagine what his life would be like without you?
It would be a mess a little bit. I mean, he definitely tells me, that he appreciates all the things like that I do for the business, all the things I do for our family and keeping things running and going smoothly. I mean, he definitely tells me for sure.
But do you feel like it's enough? Do you think you're doing enough to actually support him?
I do most of the time. Most of the time. Sometimes I know I've said to him, like, gosh, just whatever. Like of course, there's things that it's like he has to handle that I'm not able to. And so I know there are times where I've said to him, like, gosh, I just wish there was something more I could do to help you,
That's a struggle that you have. Her biggest struggle from my perspective is when it's something that I'm dealing with that she can't intervene on or can't help with. That's when she gets frustrated and kind of feels like, oh, Like, am I actually helping? And I'm like, Karissa, I
Sure.
wish you'd help
Yeah.
with this, you know, but believe me, you help with all these other things and do these things that I don't even have to think about.
So you feel super responsible for his success and for his well-being.
I mean, I for sure feel like, yeah, I contribute to to it, you know?
But you can hear the shadow in that, right,
Yeah.
Rachel? I mean,
I think yeah, this is something that, you know, what happens at sometimes when women lose their identity of who they are, they end up being very resentful. And it happens sometimes, but not.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, I don't feel that at all. I guess, Patrick, I don't think you would say that, but you can.
No, not at all. I feel nothing but support from you. I mean, 100% of the time.
you are a shining example of what driven couples can become. And the rub about not making the bed is a great example. Leaving dishes in the sink, not even seeing them, I'm sure, Patrick, right? How'd you guys do 24 years together? How'd you guys figure that out?
I try to help out as much as I can, but I don't know how Karissa does it, but she's so understanding. Like, Patrick has these other 813 things going on. You know, not like you don't have anything going on, believe me. It's like you do everything in our house, you do everything for our family. I mean, I try to jump in where and when possible. Like last night was a great example. Like I did the dishes last night. Most of the time I'm not home at 5:30 or 6 o'clock to even eat with you two, or let alone do the dishes. But I mean, she right away chimed in like, hey, I so appreciate you doing the dishes tonight. So I don't know. It's like we just somehow we find this balance of bouncing off each other and helping when and where possible. And we never, I don't feel like we ever judge each other on who's doing what or not doing what.
So there's a lack of scorekeeping.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no scorekeeping. No. Yeah, I jump on that right away because I know that's how it can be in relationships. And anytime I ever have seen that, like with other couples, I always go, gosh, that would not be fun, like to live like that. So thank goodness that's not how it is for us, I guess, at all.
I think we've always just approached everything as a team. We've never looked at it like it's yours or it's mine. You know, it's my endeavor or your endeavor or
Mm-mm.
my money, or your money or anything like that. It's always
No.
just ours. We're going to do this. It's our bank account. It's our house. It's our whatever, you name it.
It sounds like, Karissa, you are really like, you accept the role and you appreciate the role that you're sitting in. You honor who you are in this greater picture. When you guys sit on your annual planning, like who sets the vision? I know you're going to say everybody, both, but like who really is the one that's charting the way and leading the vision in your relationship, in your family, and what your future looks like?
That's a leadership question. Who is leading that visionary?
I think we
Yeah.
I think we lead in respective areas. Like I lead in A, C, D, and T, and Z, and she leads in B and F and
Rest of
R.
the
And
alphabet.
Can you name ACD? Like, because you know,
Yeah.
it's important. Like, is it in spirituality? Is it in the how you're raising your kids? Is it your financial goals? What kind of house you should have? Like, who leads what? Like, I think that's really important. You know, I call it the accountability chart of our life. And in our relationship, there is accountability chart. Who's accountable for this part of leadership, that part? Because it's equally important.
Karissa, how do you understand leadership? How do you know you're being led versus controlled?
It's a choice. If I'm making my own choices, I know I'm leading my own life. Like someone isn't dictating. I mean, obviously we all have things we have to do, guidelines, whatever. But for the most part, it's like, gosh, I know I'm not sure where I'm going with this.
So it feels like no matter what Patrick is trying to get you to see in his vision, you still have choice in there. You have power in there.
Yeah, yes, for sure. I mean, it's not that I don't ever question him or, you know, have different ideas or don't, you know, disagree with what he thinks or a direction he thinks we should go. I mean, we definitely don't always see eye to eye. And I guess I'm not ever afraid to say that, you know, if I don't agree, but
I think if you broke it down high level, I feel like maybe I lead professionally and you lead
yes,
personally.
I would agree with that.
There's a deep trust and respect for each other, and both of you have equal say and footing. And for women to be assertive and be able to push back in a very honorable, respectful way, like you guys are a true example.
I think it's interesting too, because she and I have come to some really hard realizations, especially, I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, even since Doug, you and I talked a few weeks ago about our professional lives have led us so far to this point, and we're kind of pivoting back the other direction now to say, hey, we need to figure out personally what we want and then design our professional lives around that. So it's been a major like paradigm shift that we've really come to just as of recently.
How do you understand being led by Karissa? How does she lead you?
Oh man, I mean, I think of obviously driven, I'm visual, so I think of she fills in all the gaps and cracks in every way, shape, and form for me. Where I'm lacking, where I don't see things, where I don't anticipate or am proactive, like she's always there to fill in, give advice. The spidey sense kicks in and is able to just, like I said, complement. I think the word I keep coming back to is complementary. Like we complement each other so well. I push her and pull her at times, and then she is also doing the exact same, but in a different facet of our lives. You know, she's pushing and pulling personally, I'm pushing and prodding kind of professionally. And now it's like we've come to this big realization of, you know, the push pull in those two avenues needs to now be more down the personal lane than the professional. Let our personal lives determine professionally how we need to structure things, sort of.
That's an interesting power dynamic shift. You're literally saying that the personal should have more power than it has had.
Absolutely, 100%. And a huge chunk of that has come from just the grind that it has taken. And again, both of us are such linear down the road thinkers that we've really started thinking about, man, our 7-year-old daughter, you know, what's our life going to look like in a year, 2 years, 5 years? You know, and our time is limited with her, and she's our the only one we're going to have probably. So what do we really want to make of this? And I've been such a hard charger professionally. It's taken some hard lessons as of recently to go, whoa, hold on. This is the wrong prioritization here. We need to back up here and shift gears and go down the other fork in the road for a while here.
Do you think your daughter is driven?
That she's driven? Oh, 100%.
How do you see it? My son negotiates with me. Oh God, but how do you see it?
Perfectionism.
She's a perfectionist, yes.
High level of creativity, very intuitive like you. That little turkey picked up on stuff where it's like, how in the world did she figure that out or derive that from this or that? Or...
Yeah.
I'm smiling deeply because there's an old saying that girls are really easy until about 11. Boys are really hard until about 11. Then they flip. But this
you only have girls and I only have boys, so we don't know. You have to trade a kid and see.
I got a 17-year-old girl for you if you want her. She's a sweetheart, but boy, oh boy, there's a lot of chaos going on there. It's how is co-parenting?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely like let her, I mean, she's kind of in that stage of life where it's like she's really able to start being in a lot more activities. You know, we're kind of just getting into that there's more opportunity there for her, and she wants to try everything. Of course, that's just the type of kid she is. She doesn't want to miss out on anything. She'll say to me, Mom, I have this, and this today. Like, I have a busy day. Like, she likes to know what her plan is and know that her schedule is full. But she's a busy one.
I feel like we talk a lot though about her and our approach to how we're going to do things with her. I mean, she's adopted, and I even remember talking about, like, before we adopted her, like, how are we going to manage this gym situation in the morning? Because both of us go to the gym together in the mornings. So it's like we talked about, okay, let's do the math because we're both analytical. So like, let's break down the numbers here and the hours. You know, you go to the gym at this time, I would go at this time. Does that work out? Does that give you enough time? Whatever. So I think we communicate so much about, how we talk to her, how we approach her. Last night she threw out the phrase growth mindset to us on the couch. And we were like, oh God.
We had parent teachers conferences last night, and so we got home and we were going through the areas that she shines and then the areas she needs to grow. And yeah, when we went through the areas of growth, she said, like, growth mindset. We were both like, yes.
They pick up everything.
Yeah, the collaboration between you guys, it started this way and it's just continued, or it naturally, you guys observed this in your parents, the collaboration?
I think a huge part of it was we didn't become parents until, I was 30, I suppose I was 34, you were 33.
We were married for like 10 years.
I have a lot of siblings, so we got to view parenting a lot before we became parents. So we talked a lot, for the years leading up to it, of how we would parent our kids. Oh, we would do this, we wouldn't do that. Oh, we saw this and we saw that. So I feel like by the time we actually got to it, we were way better prepared than having kids at 23 and 22 when we first got married.
The collaboration is just remarkable. They're competitive. Both of you guys are competitive, I'm sure, but never with each other. Board games even.
A good game of Uno, or yeah.
I'm more competitive, but
yes.
It definitely comes out in you at times, I feel.
Yeah, where do you think you see her drivenness where she doesn't?
I see it in lots of different places. I can't think of anything in particular. I just don't think it surfaces emotionally. Like males like myself, like if you're driven, you're competitive, like you see it, you feel it, you're going to hear about it. I think with you, I feel it, but I don't necessarily hear it, or I don't necessarily see it.
But you know it's bubbling underneath.
Oh yeah.
Chrissy, do you think it's part of the messaging we're given as women of like, be nice, show up feminine, don't be too pushy, too loud, all that?
I think of that every day. I tell my daughter when she leaves for school when I say be good, I'm always like, oh gosh, like that's really not what I mean, it is.
What do you
but
mean?
It's more like be kind, mainly, which we do say to her. But yeah, I don't want her to hear that and then grow up thinking like, oh, I'm just supposed to, do ABC and follow in line and, not explore or grow or push the boundaries. Like we definitely don't want her to think that.
How do you push boundaries in your feminine way? Because you seem to have that balance of like pushing boundaries, but really like leaning into your feminine part of yourself.
That's a tough one. I don't know.
What do you love most about being a woman?
That's not an easier one. Just like in our family and all that. I definitely feel like, just like we talked about, the kind of the same, just keeping things in order and moving and running as smooth as possible.
You're the family integrator, if you think vision integrator relationship, like I'm the hurricane that comes in a half hour late and flying off the handle about something and a million things to do. And you're the one that's like, I'll do the dishes. I'll make sure she gets ready for bed. I'll make sure the spelling words get studied. Patrick, give her a half hour or spend some time with her here while I'm going to go do this. Like you just keep the trains moving. Within our family.
In a nurturing way, though.
Like I was gonna say, do you always say yes, or do you sometimes find yourself saying no? And if you say no, how do you say no?
That's the true power of feminine. Men don't, fine then, I'll do the dishes is kind of our take, where I got it. It's a different energy system. It really is. You literally keep the wheels on the wagon. It's right.
Yeah. For sure. Yes. Yeah, I feel that, but I don't know, it just comes naturally, I guess. I don't really think about it. It just kind of happens. I just kind of do it.
Do you ever say no? And if so, how?
I do. I think I used to maybe have a harder time not standing up for myself or just going along with the flow even if I didn't necessarily agree or think the same. But I feel like I've kind of found my way where I kind of stand my ground a little more, just as I've gotten older and learned lessons and all those kind of things. But
you do have a hard time sometimes with that though. Like even sometimes, like if she tells me like, hey, I'm gonna go out with some friends on Thursday night, and then come Thursday night, 5 minutes before she's to walk out the door, she's like, I feel so bad doing this. I'm like, no,
well,
no. She's like, well, you have a million things to do. And I'm like, no. I said, no, like I never question it. I never try to pull her back. I'm like, no, you have to do what you need to do for yourself. And then she does the exact same to me. Like, no, Patrick, get your ass over there and go hunt with your friend that asked you to do it. I don't care how much work you have to do. You need to get out because you've been living in a cave lately.
yeah,
But we both push each other in that manner, I would say.
So you both
Yeah.
identify the need, both appreciate that you both need individuality in order to come together and be a team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
We do a lot together just as a couple, like just naturally because we are running a business together. Even when we tell ourselves like, nope, we're not going to talk work, we're not going to do that tonight. It's like somehow we always kind of get led back there, which most of the time I tell Patrick, it's like over communicate with me. That's what makes me feel better and in tune with what's going on. Like I want to know.
Every man listening to this, burn that into your brain.
Which part? Repeat, Doug.
Over communicate everything. And this, well, I'll ask Patrick this because it's a horrible habit some men have, particularly driven men. We will not disclose everything that we're doing to our wives because we don't want to scare them or hurt them.
Is that true, Patrick?
I don't think I do that very often though. I feel like
No.
I'm pretty straight up with like what's happening. I mean, I've been told by people before that I overshare, that I reveal too many things and talk about too much or, kind of behind the scenes or whatever.
But this trust that she can handle it, no matter what it is. She's true partner in you. That's in my experience working with a lot of couples over the 30 years I've been doing this, that's usually earned. You guys had some real struggles in your marriage and negotiated and figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like the infertility issues that we went through, before adopting our daughter and stuff put us through a lot of challenges. And it was very testing, for us, but never at any point did we ever look at each other or did it pull us apart or, tribulations and trials either pull you apart or they push you together even closer. And those are your only two options.
What you were saying earlier, Karissa, about integrity. Do what you say what you do, and just that model of actually, accountability. Own your don't blame the other. That comes naturally to both of you.
Yeah, and it's something that drives us.
How you take it in though, and you blame yourselves, and then you have each other to say, nah, you need to go anyway.
Very true.
That's beautiful. Yeah, we need to develop a course around that.
The pattern that I see is when I ask Karissa about boundaries, assertiveness, saying no, right? When a woman has boundaries and says no, she is accountable, she is mature, and then the spouse, the man says, I can trust her, I can bring information, hard information to her, because I know she's not going to fall apart all over the floor and I'll have to pick her up, because that's the last thing the guy wants to do.
Well, what's our phrase we always use, Karissa? We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
They said
we
it.
always have. We always. It's like, what's the other choice? Yeah, we've had enough things to navigate through in our marriage that between the infertility, just the career, just trying to figure out what it was, at first what Patrick was really looking for. And then now obviously just like running a business together, it's like we've had like a wide variety of trials and tribulations to handle and work through.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, there's a faith piece to that, and there's a spiritual piece to that. I'm sure that's anchored in you both, and that's beautiful. Golly.
We kind of live by that, try to live by that theory of if you're not going to remember it in 5 years, don't give it more than 5 minutes. Sometimes we do, but I think we're pretty good about that. Just another issue, right?
What would you tell people that are just beginning a driven relationship? What's the advice you'd give them?
As you mentioned, Doug, communicate. Communication is key. I mean, good, bad, otherwise, if you're not on the same page communication wise, you're going to drift apart. And I would say bring the other person, you both have to be on the same ride.
That's a big ask for a lot of driven men to ask women to do because it takes that. Karissa, what would you say to a 23-year-old driven woman that's looking at a driven guy going, holy crap?
Yeah, I think I would just say like we tell our daughter all the time, like you have the power to choose like your attitude, and even if you have a bad day or a bad hour or a bad 5 minutes or whatever, it's like you can reframe your mind at any time and choose to how you're going to respond or react to someone or a situation, whatever it is. You have the power to kind of choose and how you navigate.
I think I would also say help the other person be intentional about the things they are not intentional about themselves. Yeah, I'm making up words here. Like I'm not intentional about planning time with friends or social time or time off from work and stuff, where Karissa makes me be intentional about those things. And we set vacations way out months in advance. And on the flip side, I'm intentional about pushing Karissa out of her comfort zone because she sometimes naturally struggles doing that. So I'm the one pushing her to that ledge, and we both allow each other to do that with the other. And it makes both of us grow. I mean,
and I'll repeat that. You both do it out loud. You talk about it. You are communicating this. Hey, I think I see your edge here and let's push you farther, and you're not taking care of yourself. And I'm coming from a place of love and care. I'm not coming from a place of judgment. There is a course in here too. This is beautiful. Seriously, I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed this. This is fantastic.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, this is a blast.
Yes, it's great. Thank you for having us.
And for everybody else listening, please share this with other driven couples that you know, and go and follow us on wherever you're listening to, because we want to impact more driven couples. We want people to learn how to navigate in driven relationships.
But then this power couple that you heard here today is very achievable. I mean, this is, because you guys are kicking something. It's really amazing. It's cool. And raising a hell of a daughter. So thank you guys for being